My name is Miguel Angel Machado. I was born in San Francisco, but I grew up in Richmond, California. In my teen life, in my 20s. I've lived a lot of places, but I would say I grew up in Richmond.
What was your relationship with Christ as a young child?
So I was lucky enough, well, I wouldn't say lucky enough, blessed enough for my parents to have raised me in church since I was little. My dad, when I was about 4 years old, he did do a few years and he did some time. So my mom, she still was able to put me in a private school at a young age. Only for a couple of years. I ended up going to public school, but I was in a private school for several years, and then she just would bring me to church. So I kind of grew up in church, which was a blessing, and yeah.
What was your personal relationship with Christ?
Personal, I would say, when you grow up in church, you learn how to pray. They teach you to pray. I never really read the Bible like I should, we want to teach our kids to. I guess it was just the fear of the Lord. Even though, I ended up doing things, as I got older that weren't right. I think I've always had that fear of God in me. Anything I did, I thought about the Lord, but sometimes I would still do, things I wasn't supposed to.
Growing up with you said it was just your mother in the house? Or?
Yeah, that was a few years. Yeah,
okay.
That was about 5 years.
Okay, so what was that dynamic for you as a child growing up with your father, if I'm not mistaken, you said incarcerated?
Yeah.
And your mother being a prayer warrior at home?
It was me and my two sisters, my older sisters, and then we always would, we stayed with my grandma at first in an apartment, so we would all be crowded in there. But we also, my auntie, which was my mom's sister, and her, and my cousin, we kind of all stuck together. We all lived together a couple times at my grandma's house. Then we moved to San Pablo, and we lived in the house together. So we always it was always a group of us. So, it was kind of like comfortable. Like of course I miss my dad and everything, but I always felt like the family, because it was more than just my mom and my sisters. It was my auntie and my cousin. So it worked out.
So you said you missed your father, and you being growing up as a man, was there something that you missed, do you feel like, in your childhood, not having him present for those, you said 5 years?
Yeah, I really don't. I've never been one to hold on to something in the past. I'm not the type to hold a grudge. I don't feel like I missed anything. I just now I have my own kids, and again, I don't say, okay, well, I want to do this better. Well, I do. I guess with my kids, I say, okay, I'm going to always be there for them, and kind of just not make the same mistakes that he did, even though I did a few things that could have led me that way. But up until maybe in middle school, I was still going to a private school, and I still, had the fear of the Lord. It wasn't until about I was 16 years old, I went to a Catholic school. So I've always gone to a Christian private school. I really wanted to go to a private Catholic school. And my parents, even though they didn't have that much money, they were still able to get me into that, which I thank them for. And so I guess about the age of 15 or 16 is when I started meeting people that, that led me the wrong way. And that's when I happened to meet at that time, which was my best friend, and at that time, and he's the one pretty much that showed me, introduced me to a lot of things that I know I shouldn't have gotten into. My mom was never aware. I always never would cuss around her. I would never drink or anything. So I guess it's probably pretty common for a lot of people around that age. Unfortunately, it first started off, of course, drinking, hanging out, smoking, kind of the typical things, unfortunately, like I said, that a lot of kids that age get introduced to. And again, my mom, my parents, they were always working. So they kind of trusted me. So, and I would never come home showing any signs of anything that I did. So, that's when I got introduced to alcohol and all that. But then I started, unfortunately, the friend at the time, his older brother was involved in the drug business. So I got exposed to a lot of that, and I learned a lot, from that also. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't get heavily involved in actually doing drugs. I experimented with it a little bit. Again, I was always afraid. I had the fear of the Lord, but I would still, test my boundaries. And so, but the main part was the drug dealing, the drug making, and being around all the older guys who would show us, little parts of what to do, how to make it, and how to sell it. I was getting further and further away from God. So the more time I hung out, I wouldn't come home. I'd be hanging out, smoking, drinking. When it was time for them to do what they had to do, we'd be up late night, all night, in the houses, manufacturing it or whatnot. And I guess I pulled away more from the Lord from then. I got really involved deep because I was having fun at the time, and I was just learning a lot more stuff. So I felt like I didn't need the Lord, and I just kept backsliding more, further and further away. And that fear of the Lord kind of was just like, it went away. I had got a little older, so the more I stayed out, the more I was more rebellious to my parents. They always wanted me to come home, and I got in trouble. We'd have arguments, but I just wouldn't come home. And the more and more I didn't come home, unfortunately, at some point they just kind of stopped nagging me, for lack of a better word. So as time went on, as I got older, 17, 18, I would just be hanging out. They would have nice cars. We would go hang out. Buy the number one thing I think is just buying alcohol, right? You go out, you drink, you chase girls, you smoked, and then once it's time to make some money, and you need some of the product, I guess. It was just always a time where you had to cut everything out and just kind of go, how you say it, you just have to turn everything off and then get into that mode where you're going to be in that house dealing with all the stuff that's involved with it, and that's it. It was at least, so from 17 for at least till my late 20s, I would say. Again, as I got older, you get, you have more freedom. You feel older. You start making decisions like you're not a kid anymore. You think you're an adult. So you're just out there hanging out. You're acting like a knucklehead, putting myself in danger. Not really caring of any consequences. And at that point, there were times where I might have went to church 1 or 2 times a month, or not even a month, but every so often. But I was really just out, just hanging out most of those years from 17 to, like I said, my late 20s.
So first off, within that 17 to late 20s,
Mm-hmm.
is there a particular situation where it stood out, where it could have went way south, but that it was the hand of the Lord on you?
Yeah, for sure there's a few times, but the one time that I can really remember is it was my best friend that introduced me to the whole thing. He actually had me set up, and so I had a gun pointed to my head. So I think, again, it can happen even as Christians, where somebody turns against you, somebody's jealous. It happens, and it happens anywhere. But my best friend was jealous of me, and at the time I didn't know that it was him, but basically he was just jealous of everything. And so he had me set up at my own apartment. We were supposed to hang out, and he never showed up. And so instead, 2 other people showed up and knocked on my door, and then it just happened from there, where they pointed the gun at my head. Fortunately, they didn't really beat me up or anything, but they tied me up, and and it was a pretty scary situation. So that also led to retaliation, which I think, I didn't mention this a couple minutes ago, but I think that was the scarier part, because the retaliation had me walking around afterwards feeling like somebody was just going to blow my head off. Like I had to watch my back every second, every minute of where I went afterwards, because of the retaliation that I might get back after I retaliated, if that makes sense. So that whole episode during that time when I was set up and, had a gun drawn to me, and then I retaliated, that was the scariest. I think I should have said that, because that feeling of not being able, when you try to go to sleep and you feel like, somebody's going to come knock your door down and do whatever, try to kill you, that probably was my scariest point. The retaliation part obviously was the scariest, because I knew that I wasn't really 100% like invested in how do you say it, like, see, I'm thrown off now. So my heart wasn't in it to retaliate, but I knew I had to, just because of the type of business it is. If you don't do something, you get looked at a certain way. So the retaliation part was the scariest, because I know that I wasn't that type of person. I'm not that type of person to shoot anybody or whatever, or try to take anybody out, right? That's when I guess you could say maybe the Holy Spirit tries to, tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, you're not supposed to be doing this.
So what was the effect of after the retaliation within yourself? And what was your life like and mentality?
It just, afterwards, there's just no peace that I had, from what was all happening. And so it helped me realize, like, I already knew that I wasn't supposed to, be doing stuff like that or living that lifestyle, but I had already been doing it obviously for a while. And so it's just like, it's like a warning, maybe to, change. But the main thing is just not being able to be comfortable and have that peace. You walk around in fear for, my girlfriend at the time, maybe some family members that, you put their lives in jeopardy for, just the dumb mistakes that I was making.
What was your relationship with God in relation and your personal life at that point?
So I think when we all go through something, we go running to God, right? So at that point, I felt like, what, I don't want to do this anymore. Lord, protect me. But as soon as, time goes by and everything kind of quiets down or nothing happens, you get comfortable again and you start going back to your old habits. And for me, it was still, drinking, smoking, and I actually started, selling again. I changed it up during that time. And so as I got more comfortable in my personal life, you start saying, okay, you don't need God anymore. You don't actually say it, but you live it. Like, you don't pray, you don't say, oh, God, help me. And so my mom, obviously she's still praying for me, and, I would still go to church once in a while again. And, but, even though all that happened, again, I went back to, doing the same thing. I didn't learn my lesson. So, as I mentioned, I was still in that lifestyle even after my third kid, and in my relationship with my girlfriend, now wife, it was okay. But when you drink, you smoke, you hang out, that opens the doors for things to happen. So I would argue with her a lot, and it was mainly the alcohol. And so, we would fight, argue in front of the kids, and that kind of weighed on me, for a while. But then again, just the bad habits we always revert back to, and so it started becoming really, really toxic. And I I started going back to trying to depend on the Lord. I know I never thought of him as he's always there, but that's kind of like what we always are, like our backup, right? Like, oh my gosh, everything's crazy. Lord, help me. So as I'm realizing how ugly, I'm becoming, or I was, and my kids, they're seeing everything. And even from my past relationship, things are still the same on my new relationship. I think that's when maybe, the Holy Spirit kind of knocked and said, hey, you need to change, right? And so I was more conscious about my actions, but I still wasn't to the point where I wanted to stop. And so I guess the battles I had with my now wife and the fact that I was selling drugs still, it helped me realize, like, you know what, that's it. It has to come to an end, because this is the only way that I'm going to get that peace, or I'm going to have the family, not let my children watch what's going on. I mean, they didn't know the drug part, but they definitely seen the arguments and all those things, all that ugliness. So as soon as I started realizing, hey, look, I need to stop fighting. I need to stop selling, because look what I'm contributing to. And I know a lot of people say, oh, well, if you don't do it, someone else will. But to me, that didn't even matter. I just needed to, not do that anymore, because I guess it was the Holy Spirit which really convicted me. What caused me to change was the effect that it was having on the kids, the effect that it was having on my relationship with my wife now, or his girlfriend then, and even my family, because my mom knew everything that was going on. And so I knew that it also wasn't pleasing to the Lord, because again, I've always had, that fear of God, even though I went through all that period of time of not, obviously fearing him. But I think I just wanted to be normal, I guess. I didn't want to be fighting or contributing to somebody else's, like their poison, basically. And so I knew that the only way, obviously, is to change your life and, give my life to God, because that's how I grew up.
You knew that you wanted to live right for the Lord. So what were the steps you had to do to complete that?
The first thing was to get married. I grew up in church, so I knew that, marriage is, a big deal. Like, in the Lord's eyes, I feel like, he meant for us, man and a woman, to be married. I had my kids, and I had 3 at that time. So I felt that once I got married, that could open up, more doors, as a few doors were already starting to open, that I noticed, just the change in myself, the desire to want to leave that lifestyle alone, that desire to fix my relationship with my girlfriend / wife at that, the desire, and the only way to do that was going to be to go back to the Lord, but not just temporarily. It was going to have to be for good, which meant surrendering. And so surrendering doesn't mean like you're always instantly going to change, but the Holy Spirit already started working in me, where I just had to make a decision, like, that's it. I'm going to try to go to church at that time. I'm going to just work on myself. I'll pray, whatever it was going to take. Again, it takes time. It doesn't happen. It didn't happen instantly, but I was already on the right path, first marrying my wife, and then even cutting out alcohol completely after a couple months of getting married. I just said, that's it. I'm not going to drink. I know that we shouldn't be getting drunk and all that. So that's part of changing your lifestyle for God. So, yeah.
So this is 2016, right?
Right.
So what has your life and your walk with Christ been like? And how has your life changed since you have left that old lifestyle alone?
I would say first thing is peace and joy. So that doesn't mean that everything is just always going to be happy and Mary and whatever, I have a lot of peace now, and there's a lot of maturing, my Christian walk. It's exciting to see my growth from, let's say, 2017, when I stopped drinking, and the desire that the Holy Spirit has put in my life to get closer and to also teach my children, bring them to church how I was, because there was a period of time where they weren't going around the same age when I was going, so that wasn't fair to them. They didn't get to grow up sometimes in their early years like I did. So as these last couple of years have gone by, I would say just growth in my Christian walk, and you develop love, not just for your family. You start, how do you say it? I mean, you just start enjoying Christian life.
What has been the most changing in comparison to these last 6 years to the time that you lived for Satan?
Oh, it's a lot. It's like a 360, a whole change. Even from, like I said, from stop drinking, even to, watching what I say. There's a lot that has changed. The arguments that we used to get into, obviously they don't happen anymore. I mean, we do, get into, not arguments, but we have disagreements, but it's handled different now than it used to be, because, you want to be still an example to the kids, and that it's not pleasing to the Lord. You start trying to practice all these things that the Bible teaches us, right? We need to control ourselves and all that. So I think as the Holy Spirit, as you mature in your Christian walk, and the Holy Spirit is guiding you, you start trying to practice everything that the Bible teaches, and when you instill that in your kids also, or when you show that to your kids, it just, I guess, you just become a better example to them, and you start, and they pretty much, mimic everything you do, almost everything. And so you're teaching them the right way.
What is some advice you would give to someone who was also selling drugs?
The advice I would give to someone is to really think about the lives that you're affecting. You're affecting your family's life. If you have kids, you're affecting their life. And most of all, you're affecting your life in these decisions that you make. You're putting your life at risk. You're putting people's lives at risk just for a temporary joy, a temporary pleasure that doesn't lead to anything. It ultimately leads to chaos. And so if you are walking with the Lord, you need to think about your salvation. And we weren't made for this. We're not made to live this type of lifestyle, to fulfill what our flesh desires. That's a ploy of the enemy. And for those that don't know the Lord is with you through all these situations. And it's a lifestyle that He wouldn't want you to live.
How would you explain Jesus Christ to someone who doesn't know Him yet?
I would explain Jesus as somebody who was there for you, no matter through what times or what you've done. He's there for you as long as if you seek Him, He'll give you, I know I keep going to joy and peace, but He's there always for you through the times that you think He's not there, or when there's nobody there to comfort you. He's there. He's there for you. He's your Father, He's your friend, and He's your God, all in one.